Good morning, and welcome to Story Time with Kate. Today is a short story about my favorite podcasts. So, I'm a huge podcast fan, so I started to listen to podcasts or pre recorded radio shows, you can call it this way, a long time ago when I was 19. And I had my first MP3 player. And then when I bought iPod, I was absolutely on cloud nine that I could listen to my favorite BBC shows and other shows that I became fond of. So over the years, my interest changed, of course. So this story is about five podcasts focusing on early childhood education and care. So these are my top five favorites. So I hope you will enjoy them as well. So you can actually listen to the podcast on any device nowadays. So iPod, iPad, mostly phones, smartphones, computers. I listen to the podcasts on my phone, so and I use Apple, so because I have iPhone, but I used to have Samsung as well, and this is easy to add through any podcast apps. So this one is first and my favorite. It's called The Early Childhood Nerd by Heather Bernsanti. So it's just hilarious podcast to listen to, humorous, full of interesting ideas, sometimes rambling as well, so you feel like a part of conversation between two people, sometimes more. Heather is a teacher herself, and she teaches young children, so she's got plenty of experience, and her guests are often very dear to me as well. So I like when she invites experts from the field. It is an American show, but absolutely relevant to Australia. So one of my colleagues gave me advice to listen to this show, and since then I'm hooked on. So I'm listening to every single episode, and actually caught up with quite a few from the past. So they all are absolutely wonderful and relevant, and the topics they raise while I'm driving to work, for example, or running, I'm listening to the topics like progressive lunch times, discipline and guidance, behavior guidance in early childhood education and care, play, yeah, one of the biggest topics, teaching young children, very young babies and toddlers, how to deal with toddlers and how to love them and how to educate them, and all the other wonderful topics like messy play. So definitely number one. So I'll just show you how you can listen to the podcast. For example, if you don't have podcast app and you don't like listening to podcasts, you can always watch videos here. So there you go. And you can watch it online and subscribe. So yeah, so that's the way. The other one is similar, very funny, called Childcare Bar and Grill. So also a fantastic, informative, humorous podcast that is run by Lisa Murphy. And if you don't know who Lisa Murphy is, that's another wonderful discovery for you. And Jeff Johnson. So also American, but absolutely fantastic. I really like listening to Childcare Bar and Grill because it's relaxed. It's like you will have informal conversations with your colleagues. So highly recommended. Now, you can see this button here, listen on Apple Podcasts. So if you have, like me, iPhone, so you can just subscribe to this podcast easily. There you go. So for example, you have iTunes, download iTunes and click, and then you will subscribe. You can also play it online like that. Yeah, if you are, let's say, working on documentation and or doing something.
Like the show? Want to listen to episodes early?
There you go. So next podcast is, it's still connecting. So my other favorite is called The Early Education Show. Yes, so it's by Lisa, Leanne, and Liam. Lisa Bryant, Leanne Gibbs, and Liam oh my God, I forgot. McNichols. McNichols, sorry, Liam. So, yeah, love this show. Listened from the first episode, so now it's more than 100. So the topics they raise are absolutely amazing as well. They interview people who are experts and people who I've never heard of. So it's very diverse, if it makes sense. And what I also like is another conversational style of podcasts. So how the three hosts actually talk about issues sometimes just between themselves, among themselves, and also when they invite specialists, it's amazing. Yeah, so you can see that the range is pretty interesting. So for example, they talked a lot about COVID-19 while we were in the middle of pandemics here in Australia. It's an Australian podcast, so definitely one of my favorites. So subscribe and listen. You can also find them on Facebook. Next one is Multiverse podcast. You can listen to it again on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, or SoundCloud. So that's another way to listen to the podcast. Multiverse, not this one. Just give me a second. Dr. Ruby. Here. So I'm just gonna go to the website so you know what I'm talking about. So Dr. Red Ruby Scarlett, she's an educational consultant, also an expert in inclusion and anti-bias approach. So highly recommend you all her books. Yes, so but I've been following Dr. Red Ruby Scarlett for a while. Of course, since I started at university, but now I was very excited that she's got a podcast, so you can find it as well on Apple Podcast, and there are interviews mostly, so interviews with people who are very open and honest, so I really like listening to this podcast, so highly recommend it. If I try to open this one, it's called, that's the last one, although it's plenty of them. It's called Teaching with Body and the Mind. I don't know why it's not opening. Just give me a second. Yeah, so again, very good podcast. I support teaching children as, you know, as a whole child, so with a body and mind. So we should never forget that children are sensory beings, and this podcast is fantastic for that. I don't know why it's not working. I'm sorry. I'll just try another one. So you can, let's say open this page, Facebook. This podcast is quite interesting. So they talk a lot about play, of course, tumble play, and lots of relevant information on supporting messy play, so muddy play, all body movement. So yeah, if you want also to explore sensory play and discuss how it's actually not allowed in many centers and many parents frown upon it as well. So this is a very beautiful podcast on educating children holistically. There are also podcasts that I did not talk about today, which I'll leave for another time, but I hope you enjoyed Early Childhood Nerd, by Heather Burns-Senti, Early Education Show, that's an Australian one. Multiverse by Dr. Red Ruby Scarlett, Teaching with Body in Mind, and the other one was Childcare Bar and Grill. So these are my 5 top podcasts, and I'll show you the app that I'm listening to, just so you know what it looks like. So this is my phone, and I click on podcast app. Yes, so you see this one, podcast app. Not this one. That's the way. So, and these are all the podcasts. So I was talking about Early Childhood Education Show. There you go. Enjoy. Tell me what are your favorite podcasts, and thank you for listening. Story time with Kate.